This race saw the coldest temperatures that it's seen in years, and that still wasn't enough to save this trash ass aero package. Let's get into it. This is the fuel. What's happening, ladies and germs? This is the Packerman, and welcome to today's edition of The Fuel, where today we're going to be talking about the 2020 Hollywood Casino 400 at the Kansas Speedway. And this one was kind of a mixed bag because, we saw some pretty good racing in parts of this race, but when it all came down to it and the chips were on the line, the race was really won on pit road. And to me, that's just a big problem. But since we don't have any news of the week that's really relevant at the moment, at the time I'm recording this anyway, let's go ahead and considering that the past couple weeks have been over an hour long, a little over 70 minutes on both occasions. I think last week was over 80 minutes, so quite a bit of talking, but not really a whole lot to talk about this week other than the race itself. But I do want to wish Dale Jr. and his wife Amy congratulations on the birth of their second daughter. So, haha, Dale, you lucky son of a bitch. As my camera is fucking shaking like hell. Let's fix that. Alright, there we go. So, without further ado, let's just go ahead and get into the review, shall we? Get this done and over with. Alright, so here we go with the 2020 Hollywood Casino 400 at Kansas, the beginning of the round of 8. Season's almost over, folks. We're just 3 weeks away at this point. So the stages broke down like this. First two stages were 80 laps, with the second stage being 107 laps. Chase Elliott starts from the pole. And at this point, they were like, man, it's 45 degrees in Kansas, which is just crazy cold. Unseasonably cold, considering that it's still October. But Harvick takes Kurt Busch and Logano 3 wide for second, like right at the beginning of the race. Elliott leads lap number 1. Kurt Busch and Logano continue to fight for second with Harvick in the middle. Ryan Blaney coming into the mix in the top 5, and we got our first caution on lap 26, which was the competition caution. Truex had to start at the rear due to tech failures and was already up to 12th at this point. Everyone comes in for service, and Byron takes just 2 tires and takes over the lead of the race. And Kurt Busch gets nabbed for speeding. Ouch. That wouldn't be the end of his troubles by the end of this race. Byron leads on the restart. Harvick bypasses Byron and Elliott to take the lead on the restart. Logano and Blaney battle for 4th with teammate Keselowski right behind them. Then you got Alex Bowman with a fast car early on. Keselowski by Blaney for the 3rd position. Elliott starts closing back in on Harvick for the lead. Logano fading a bit at the end of stage 1. And Elliott gets by Harvick for the race lead. And it was during a commercial break, of course, because what else is new? So that was our first pure lead change on lap 63. Keselowski challenges Harvick for second at the end of stage 1. And he gets by him for second as Harvick's car seems to get looser on the long runs. Kez challenges Elliott for the lead as they catch lap traffic, but Elliott holds them off and wins stage 1 as Hamlin nips Blaney for the 3rd position. Everyone comes in for service, and Hamlin wins the race off pit road this time. So Hamlin leads the start of stage 2. Elliott leads the lap after the restart, but Hamlin takes it back on the outside lane for a second pure lead change on lap 88. Blaney starts challenging Elliott for second and takes it. Kurt Busch starts slicing his way through the field after his speeding penalty, so he had a fast car in this race. Blaney starts challenging Hamlin for the race lead, while Harvick and Elliott battle for the 3rd position. Kez gets by Harvick into 4th. Elliott reports that he's having radio issues, and that was something that would be plaguing him throughout the event. There were many people wondering if he should have been brought in because you need to be able to hear your spotter. So there's that. But NASCAR opted to leave him on the racetrack. Green flag pit stops begin on lap 123, and at this point I was like, man, this race is going by insanely fast. Of course, without too many cautions, it does go by quickly. Then we get our second caution on lap 144 when Matt Kenseth crashes on the front stretch after coming up across Eric Jones's nose. off of turn 4. So he was done for the day. Hamlin leads on the restart. There's some 2 wide throughout the top 10. And then, oh, look at that. We get back to the same old shit with Harvick getting back up to second right behind Hamlin. Oh, lovely. But Hamlin holds Harvick at bay and wins stage number 2, which would be big for him considering the amount of stage points that he picked up. Everybody comes in for service, although several drivers stay out, including Kyle Busch, who leads the start of stage 3. Logano gets in front of Busch and takes the lead on the restart. Harvick gets a run on Logano and takes over the lead for a third pure lead change on lap 170. Elliott gets shuffled back to 10th in the whole mess. Keselowski challenges Logano for second. Then Hamlin has to make an emergency pit stop after brushing the wall. Had a tire rub, and he was afraid that it would have cut into his tire, and that would have been disastrous. Kurt Busch starts suffering power issues, and it turns out it's the motor basically going kerblamo, which ended his day on lap 199, bringing out the third caution. So he's pretty much in a must-win now. I mean, he pretty much was before, considering that he came into this 12th, considering that he didn't really gain a whole lot of playoff points this season. But now he really is in the danger zone, to say the least. Everyone comes in for service, but they're kind of like at the edge of the pit window. So Harvick leads on the restart. According to reports, everybody's short on fuel. Harvick jumps out to an almost 5-second lead. We have all the Penske boys fighting for second, and then we have our fourth caution on lap 220 when Tyler Reddick smacks the wall on turn 4. Everyone comes in for service, and Logano wins the race off of pit road, which would turn out to be the race-winning move. Yep, the win was decided on pit road. So Logano leads on the restart. Jimmy Johnson and Ryan Preece hit the wall in turns 1 and 2, but keep going, no caution. Harvick starts challenging Logano for the lead, with Kez joining the fray with 32 laps to go. And this would continue for the rest of the race, with Harvick trying to find a way around Logano. But basically all Logano had to do was put his car where Harvick's was, and the dirty air just kept Harvick from passing Logano. Whereas before, he got out to a 5-second lead because he had the fastest car on the track. But once he gets behind Logano's car, it's like he hits a fucking brick wall. Like, you can't pass with this fucking package. It's ridiculous. Anyway, Alex Bowman up to 4th and challenging Keselowski for 3rd. Bowman gets by Keselowski for 3rd. Logano and Harvick continue to fight for the lead amongst the lap cars. But Bowman starts closing in on both Logano and Harvick in the closing laps, but is unable to get there. And Logano wins the Hollywood Casino 400 at Kansas for his 3rd win of the year. And he has booked himself a trip to Phoenix to fight for the championship. Someone who hasn't really been a factor at all in this championship. I mean, it looked like it early on, but ever since the NASCAR returned to COVID, he hasn't really been that much of a factor. And now all of a sudden he wins one fucking race and he's in the championship hunt. This fucking playoff format is a joke. And I've been saying that for years. It's time for this fucking playoff system to go. It's trash. And this fucking aero package is trash as well. I mean, you can't fucking pass. You can't pass. Harvick tried for 30 goddamn laps to get around Logano. It was pretty obvious that Harvick had the fastest car, And even though I did like the cat and mouse game between Logano and Harvick, objectively, because quite frankly I couldn't give a fuck about either of these drivers, considering that they're both douchebags. But that aside, I did enjoy the cat and mouse game, but at the same time, it just highlights how big of a problem this aero package has. You cannot fucking pass. It's ridiculous. And all the NASCAR dick suckers are basically like, well, it was a great race. It was a solid race. I'm not going to call it a great race. I'm sorry. I just can't. And while I like the cat and mouse between Logano and Harvick, the fact that all Logano had to do was just block Harvick, and Harvick couldn't get any kind of run whatsoever because the clean air is king with this fucking aero package. That was pretty much all she wrote. The race for the win was won on pit road. Why should that be? We want to see the battle for the win on the fucking racetrack. We don't want to see these wins decided on pit road. 40 laps before the finish. It's fucking absurd. And you have these, dick suckers like Kyle Petty, defending this fucking package because, he had one guy tell him on Twitter that, yeah, this fucking package is garbage. And then he decides to make a weird ass comparison. Like he says, well, my dad won the Daytona 579 and nobody called that garbage. So let me get this straight. You're going to compare a race from 40 years ago to this one. Do I even need to explain how ridiculously fucking stupid that sounds? You're literally comparing a race from a completely different era to now. I mean, it's pretty obvious that Kyle Petty is just sucking on NASCAR's knob, just sucking ass, to keep his job. Because, if he was, going against it, then he probably wouldn't have a fucking job. And that's the problem with these fucking, NASCAR pundits is that, despite the fact that NASCAR can do wrong, and they've been rightfully criticized for it in the past, you have these NASCAR pundits who are just willing to bow down and suck ass, to keep their fucking job. It's absolutely fucking pathetic. Anyways, I'm done ranting. I just want to get this fucking over with because this race, it's whatever. It's whatever at this point. So let's take a look at the results and stuff, and then we'll get out of here. Alright, so lead change count. There were 17 overall lead changes in this race, which, it's a decent number, until you see the fact that there were only 3 pure lead changes. Most of the lead changes in this race were either, on restarts or exchange of green flag pit stops. 1 second. Anyway, but like I was saying, most of the lead changes were, due to like fucking green flag pit stops and stuff. And of the 3 pure lead changes, we only saw 2 on TV. One of them was on a fucking commercial. So there's that, I suppose. So who am I going to give driver of the race to? I'm not giving it to Logano because he basically walked into this win. So I'm going to give it to Alex Bowman. Alex Bowman in the 3rd position, mainly because he has really reinvigorated himself, I guess you could say, because, he started out strong. He won the race at Auto Club at the beginning of the year. And at the beginning of the year, I was like, man, this guy could be a championship contender this year. But then we had the summer stretch, and it's just like, he just completely fell off the map. You know what I mean? But since these playoffs have begun, he has been rocking it. Top 10s and top 5s. And had a fucking rocket ship at the end of this race. And managed to get a top 3 finish. If only he had a little bit more, then he could have challenged for the win. These mile and a halves, seem to be his bread and butter. So, and, he's got a lot to prove right now because he's going to be taking over that 48 car next year. So, there's that. He is my star of the race for the Hollywood Casino 400. As for reject of the race, there wasn't a whole lot of failures that, people could really control. The reject of the race is this fucking aero package. This aero package just sucks all kinds of dick. And unfortunately, we're going to have to deal with it for one more year because of the COVID outbreak, it pushed the new generation car back from being debuted in 2021 to 2022. So we have to deal with this stupid ass aero package for one more year. Joy. Alright, so with that out of the way, top 10 results. Logano with the win, led the final 40 laps. Harvick came home in 2nd, led 85 laps. Alex Bowman in 3rd, Brad Keselowski 4th, Kyle Busch in 5th. So even though he got eliminated from the playoffs in the previous round, he's still running good. This has just been a weird ass year for him. And he's only got 3 more opportunities to get a win this year, so he's got to step it up. Chase Elliott comes home in 6th. He led 48 laps. And of course, with Joey Logano winning, that puts him on the bubble now. Ryan Blaney in 7th, William Byron 8th, Martin Truex Jr. comes home 9th, despite having to start at the rear of the field, and Christopher Bell gets a top 10 in the 95 car. So, with 2 races remaining in the round of 8 before we head to the championship round in Phoenix to crown a champion, Logano, of course, has locked himself in. Harvick with a 41-point advantage over the 5th place car. So he could conceivably lock himself into the championship round next week at Texas. Then you have Denny Hamlin, who's plus 20 right now. And then Brad Keselowski at plus 8. Which means that the 4 guys that are on the outside looking in right now are Chase Elliott in the 9 car in 5th position. He's 8 points out. Then you have Alex Bowman, despite his great run. The lack of playoff points has certainly hurt him. He's 27 out. Martin Truex Jr., he's 31 out, but Martinsville's still at the end of this round, and he's won the last 2 at Martinsville. So do not count Truex out of this just yet. And Kurt Busch is now 73 out. He's pretty much in a must-win situation at this point, unless he can get a boatload of points at Texas next week. He's going to need to really step it up and win one of these next 2 races if he wants to contend for a championship. So that's how the points look heading into Texas next week. As for my final rating for this race, I mean, it was an okay-ish race, but it wasn't anything to write home about. I'll give it a 5.5 out of 5. So 5.5 out of 10. It was alright, I guess. It's just, this package just sucks. And that's really all there is to it. Well, we breezed through this review this week after the last 2 went, an hour and 15 minutes, and I think like an hour, almost an hour and a half, respectively. So a bit of refreshing to just kind of dole out a short video this week. Next week we go to Texas, and of course that race sucks ass. Then Martinsville and Phoenix, and that will be it for the 2020 season. Can't believe we actually made it to this point. After earlier this year we didn't know if the rest of the season was even going to take place with the whole COVID-19 fucking nonsense. But here we are. Just 3 races remain until the end of the season, and then we get a 3-month break. And then we go into 2021, we do it all over again. But that's going to do it for this edition of The Fuel. Thank you very much for watching. And until next time, this is the Packer Man signing out. See you later.
You better like and subscribe or face the consequences. You have been warned.